Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I've got some beautiful, looks like spring weather here in Montana, although it's still cold, but the snow is on the ground and the blue skies are out. I know why they call it Big Sky Montana. So anyways, enjoying the outdoor life here and everything that it has to offer, as well as, right now I'm teaching a class at the local high school. It's a business entrepreneur class. And today's topic is marketing that I'm speaking on. And it's interesting that I've got a guest on the show today that kind of fits into that niche in a really, really important way. And I started going through, a friend of mine wrote a book a couple years ago. His name is Dan Fleshman. And the book is called How to Set Up Your Business for Under $1,000. And he really focuses on your social media, your own brand identity, and who you are, which are all great tools. But what do you do from there? How do you get that out into the public? How do people find out who you are and what you do? And that's exactly why I have Mickie Kennedy on the phone today from E-Releases. Mickie, thank you for being on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Little segue there for you. And I really am teaching that class today on branding and marketing. And, press releases can be such a vital, important tool to the success in your business, whether you're just starting out or if you need a nice shot in the arm, or if you've just got to get some messaging out there. So I love what your business is and what you're doing. And I want to talk about that. But could you first give our listeners some background on yourself and where things started for you and how you got to where you're at today?
Right. So about 25 years ago, I was finishing up a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing with an emphasis in poetry. So I assumed I was going to wait tables the rest of my life and write poetry in the evenings. And I did that. I did that for a summer and realized that my body, my knees, my ankles did not like being on concrete 10, 12 hours a day. And I would go home and I would just be dead. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. And so I decided I needed a safe office job. And so I got started at a telecom research firm as employee number 3. And because I had a writing background, they said, figure out press releases and send them out to the media. And I got really good at it. I was faxing at the time because that's what my boss told me is how you did it. And I would try to come up with a story to explain some interesting telecom anomalies. And the media loved it. Washington Post, Financial Times, Economist, lots of places picked it up. And I realized I had a knack for it. And another thing that I noticed is after I'd fax these press releases, the media would often call and ask if I could just email it to them. And so I knew that email seemed like a natural progression away from faxing. So I spent about a year putting together a database of journalists, asking them if I could email them press releases. And I just became a matchmaker of sending press releases for clients for a little bit of money to different places. Over the years, PR Newswire reached out to me and said, hey, you should also send your releases through us. And I said, I only charge my clients a couple $100s. And I know that you charge over $1,000 to move a 500-word press release nationally. And surprisingly, they didn't go away. They really liked that a lot of the companies that we work with are startups and small businesses and entrepreneurs. And some of them will outgrow us and be able to afford to use the wire directly. And so they felt like they were also being able to serve the small business community without providing a lot of the hand-holding that new people need. So that's what we specialize in, walking people through the process and giving them those opportunities to leverage by going over a wire. People always ask, well, what is the importance of PR and press releases? And I'm like, when it happens and it goes well, it can have like a huge leverage effect. Early in the pandemic, we did a press release for a dining bond initiative that someone had set up to help restaurants that were closed during the pandemic. We quit counting at 150 articles. Washington Post picked it up. All of the major publications, lots of food magazines and trade publications picked it up. And over 100 newspapers picked it up as well. A lot of the large ones and small ones, dailies, everybody put this out there because you could nominate your local restaurant regardless where you were located. And it created over $10 million in revenue from a single press release. And like I said, over 150 articles. And I challenge anybody in marketing to do something that potentially you can do for under $400 or $500 that could, result in that net effect. And if you have something that's really newsworthy and really engages the media, that is where, being on a wire is really important, because so many people can get access to it rather than, in PR, a lot of people, PR firms, they do personal pitching where they draft one message for one specific editor and they invest a lot of time and energy with it and follow up and stuff like that. But in this case, you don't have to do that because the messaging is so strong. And I would say that the downside of press releases is so many people do them and they do them poorly. Nobody gets fired for doing a safe press release that doesn't matter, but they also don't get media pickup as a result of that. So we get a lot of press releases where there's a new hire at the company and there's nothing really amazing about this new hire. It wasn't like they stole them away from a competitor and they're having an industry veteran. That does happen, but it's very rare. And when I see that and people spending money to put that on the wire, I feel like, oh, what a lost opportunity, because you could be doing something more strategic. And so I've been trying to train my customers to do more strategic types of press releases. And the one that always works is do a survey or study within your industry and get the results and put that into a press release. It's not that difficult. And all you have to do is, use SurveyMonkey or Google Forms to put together a survey and calculate the results and what were the biggest aha moments, and make sure you're asking the right questions. Of course, what's really applicable or important right now. Economic uncertainty, ask, do you plan on spending more or less in the future? Do you see yourself growing in the number of employees you hire, or maybe even cutting back? Things like that would be really useful to know right now to take your industry's temperature on a hot button of issues. And also throw in some weird stuff in there as well. I like the multi-page format, where I do 4 questions on each page, and I have 4 pages. And so on the last page, you can ask something that's a little left field, a little odd and weird. If they quit, you still got 75% of their responses. And often those unusual ones can really elicit something that's really intriguing. We did one for an auto repair shop in Pennsylvania, which felt like, well, we're not important enough to do a survey. And I'm like, anybody can be the author of a survey. Don't cut yourself short. And on the final page, they asked, what's the strangest thing a customer left in their car while being repaired? And it was not statistically relevant because every question response was unique, but it did very well. We put together a list of the top 50 weirdest things that people left in their car, and it went very viral in the auto industry as well as newspapers and things like that. And so and they were like, we don't know who to send this to. And I'm like, I'm sure you belong to a small or independent trade association. They would probably send it out. Stay away from the large ones because they don't like to partner and be, this. But the small ones, they don't get a lot of love in these industries. So if you approach them and say, would you be willing to send this to your members? It's just a link. And in exchange, I'll put you in a press release. I'll be issuing you over the wire. More than 90% will say yes because they see it as a win-win. They might push back and say, could you co-brand the survey, you and us? And there's no downside to that. It just adds a little more credibility to you. And yet, that's one strategic type of press release that always works. On average, between 7 and 14 articles, unique original articles get written as a result of that. And it's just, putting together the right questions and then tabulating the results and picking out the 2 or 3 that are the big surprises in that survey. And sometimes there's fodder in a survey for 2 or 3 press releases because several of the questions are really intriguing. So you could do one on one subject and one on another. And sometimes journalists will come back and ask more leading questions that might give you an idea for a new type of hook or approach.
Mickey, you've unloaded a whole bunch of gold here. I hope people are listening and taking note. I'm feverishly taking notes for questions that I want to ask you. I don't even know if we'll get through them all. By the way, you mentioned fax, and I'm old enough to remember what that was like. I can just hear that ringtone in the back of my head right now.
Yeah. Screeching
Oh,
mechanical sounds. Yeah.
I don't know why it had to
It's
be a screech. Uh,
no, yeah.
I just really briefly wanted to touch on your employer at the time. You were placed in a position that you discovered was a good fit for you. You had a knack for doing this. First of all, I want to thank the employers out there that do that to us employees, that they help us find something that we never knew that we were going to be good at or love so much. Did you realize at the time that this might go somewhere for you, or are we just happy to be doing the job because you enjoyed it?
I felt like a lot of the stuff that I got with that job really, I felt like it's setting me up for success. They asked me to put together a web page and learn HTML. And I've got thrown into that, and I said, "Wow, this is easy." I mean, you can. I mean, the thing that was the big aha for me was I want a curve like on the web page, like this other web page has. Just go to view source, and you can figure out how they did it, and then adapt it for you and stuff like that. So the most expensive websites, you could look at their code and see how they were built. So there was no surprises. And I found that really intriguing. I built my first website for e-releases early on, and I just picked up a lot at that place, because being employee 3 in a startup, you're going to wear a lot of hats and you're going to do a lot of stuff, and you say yes a lot, and you don't say no a lot, because it is expected, the pressure and the hours of working in a startup, that it's a high pressure environment, but you're going to be constantly challenged and you're going to learn some amazing stuff.
Yeah, it made me think about a story. I wrote a book last year, and I called the president of Kettle One Vodka, who I worked for 10 years. I was so appreciative of everything I learned there, all the opportunities he gave me, to say yes to things. And I was employee number one for marketing over there. And when I launched the book, I sent it to him. And I said, "Hey, Bill, I just want to thank you so much for the job and everything you gave me." And he said the most surprising thing to me. He goes, "Jim, you earned it. I didn't give that to you. You earned the job." And it really was a reflective moment for us. And I'm sure it's probably the same for you. I'm sure you earned that position as employee number 3, and your willingness to grab and all these different projects that they threw your way. You just happen to excel at some more than others, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah. So as you transition to e-releases, did you develop a business plan, or is it just something that you jumped right into and it's like, I know I'm good at this, I'll probably make a few bucks, and it evolved?
So I just figured I would be good at it. I would do it on the side. And I did it on the side for like a year and a half. And my employer knew, because my employer actually told me that when I said email seems a natural progression, he goes, "Yeah, someone should put together an email, database." And I was like, "I think I could do that." And he was very cool, because he's like, "Well, I know you're working 60 hours a week for us. As long as you continue that, I don't care what you do in your own time." But he was also encouraging being an entrepreneur himself. And I just worked at it in the evenings and in the mornings, and put together what I felt would be something that worked. And I did a lot of at the time providing feedback on forums and bulletin boards, because there wasn't paid advertising at the time like there is today. Like you couldn't advertise on Google. There was no Google at the time. It was a couple of years before Overture or GoTo.com introduced pay-per-click bidding for search engine results. And so I got customers by just being a resource and providing education on forums and networking with people, and it was very organic.
So if you don't mind, I want to jump into some press release strategies, and I don't want you to give away all the gold. I want people to call you and get some expert opinion and advice and services. But I do want to dabble a little bit just to whet people's appetite on some thoughts, because I don't think people realize the power and strength of press releases. And by the way, I've, thinking about a press release in my own story, I had a press release go out about a entrepreneur group that I conduct every Monday night. The press release went out over the summer, and it was picked up by the school that I'm currently teaching at. They reached out because of the press release and said, "Hey, would you develop a curriculum for us?" So I was able to garner a new client through one press release. It didn't cost me anything. I wrote it myself.
Right.
I pushed it out to probably 25 local newspapers, publications, and it got picked up, and he called. So there's tremendous value just in my own life recently that I've seen, not to mention in my past. But I guess my question for you is, let's start here. Can you do too many press releases as a company or as an entrepreneur?
You can. If you just pick every potential thing and try to do a press release on it, you may be doing too much, especially if you find you're not getting media pickup. Mm-hmm. And that's where I would go back to the drawing board and say, how could we be more strategic? And many times when you write a press release, you're writing it with a what's in it for me approach. And what you should be doing is take the journalist, recognize they're a gatekeeper, and say, how can I provide information and data that they would find so irresistible they would immediately want to share it with their audience. And sometimes it means if you're working on a product launch that you have to reinvent what it is. So rather than having products being launched and a bunch of bullets of features, you might focus on use studies of people who used the beta version or tested it out and what their results were, because journalists build stories. And if it's just a product with a bunch of features, bullets, there's not much of a story there. But if there's someone who used it and they achieved a result as by using it, and now there's a quote in the press release by them, they can put that into a story and build an arc in which the product is front and center. But it's not just like a spec sheet or something like that.
Yeah. I've seen many companies make that mistake because I'm on a lot of different newsletters and such, and I'm just I'm getting press release after release. I'm going, hey, I'm not going to read them anymore. And the one time that you send something that's worth reading, it's not going to get read because you've sent too many out, right? So I appreciate your advice on that. Let me ask you this: where do press releases live now that we're so focused on social media platforms?
So they live everywhere. They, of course, are on the wire. My partner is PR Newswire, so they're existing there. They are accepting as journalists any influencer, so even social media influencers. So we have people who all they have is an Instagram account with 1 million plus subscribers who sign up as a journalist and get access to the press releases so that they can put together something for their followers. And so it's really becoming fragmented, but it's also really cool because so many people talking about journalism is dying, and I'm seeing a real growth from a lot of people who are being points of influence and being new media contacts and places for you to reach. And journalists, they still have a place, but it's changing, and it's exciting. When I started, bloggers were not treated as journalists by The Wire, and I would have some come to me and they're like, I get more traffic than the industry trade magazine, and yet PR Newswire won't give me journalist access to the press releases. And eventually they came around, and it's interesting to see them now because now they're just like, you just say, this is how I would like to use press releases, and they're like, yes, we'll give you access. It's almost like they have woken up and they realize that the landscape is changing, and I think that's really exciting. It makes it a little more difficult to focus, because it used to be that you'd focus on a few trade publications, your local newspaper, and maybe some other places as well. Now there's a lot more opportunities. There's your own social media that you want to engage with your followers, but there's also the potential for other influencers and people for whom they would find your messaging interesting and want to share it with their audience. And it may be creating ready-made posts that you share with them or get them involved. Sometimes it's I know with TikTok and video Instagram platforms, it's a lot of paid stuff, but I've seen it where they will come up with a video a campaign and they want $400 and they have like many tens of thousands of subscribers, it seems like a really small entry price to be paid. And so I think that everything being free is changing a little bit. And I think that there are a lot of really cool opportunities that are out there and a lot of ways to engage. And I find it exciting. I also find it something where you're constantly having to educate yourself and learn more and how things work. And that's the part that got me excited 20 some years ago. And it still gets me excited.
Yeah, no, and that's a wonderful point about bloggers, because I have a few daily blogs that I read religiously. I'll read the whole thing every single day because I enjoy, it's a very specific content, and I don't have to spend the time going through some of the trade publications that I knew from the past to find something that's interesting to me. And when I'm marketed to through the blog, it comes across as a lot more authentic and real, whatever it is that they're talking about. And I like that. I also like that from the perspective of having businesses where I'm looking at channels that I want to reach out to, because I know those dollars are very, very specific, to that audience. So, it makes a lot of sense that that's what's happening, but it's refreshing to hear it from you that there's such a level of importance on them receiving the content they need to have better blogs and more user-friendly.
Sure.
Yeah. So where do you see the PR industry headed? Like you just suggested, it's very exciting. If you're talking to entrepreneurs, where should they be investing their dollars to build their brands and their name recognition?
Right. So I would say try to develop strategic messaging and initially try to get it out to people yourself. When you're starting, paying several $100s to send out a press release may not be in the cards, but there's no reason you couldn't put together some messaging and send it to, say, your local newspaper. And if you're lucky enough to have a business magazine or business newspaper in your area, someone there. And all it does requires is that you figure out who writes about your industry in those publications, ask for their email address. That's allowed. They're expected to have access in your community. Some people feel like, oh, I can't ask them for me email address. It's like, no, they're supposed to be accessible. Often it'll be on their website. Sometimes it's not, because so many search robots just steal them, so they don't put them front and center. But if you call and ask, they'll give it to you. And then you don't even have to write a press release when you're dealing with one-on-one for just a few targeted media. You just have to put together a really cool message that you say, hey, I've noticed this trend in my industry, and I would love to talk to you about that and how my company works and how that applies to my business. It can be as simple as that. And there's a reason that you tend to see the same businesses and companies in your local media again and again, and it's because they do the work of creating a relationship with a journalist, and they stay on their radar. 4 or 5 times a year, they're sending messages to the media and just staying front and center, so that when the journalist has a story and they need to plug in a company, you will come to mind. They'll go, oh yeah, I remember this company. Do a search and find you and reach out to you and make sure that you get some inclusion. You can do the same thing with trade publications and just get started, developing it yourself. You will reach a point where you have messaging that you feel is so strong that you want to pay to get it out there. And those are the moments where I feel like, if you have the budget and you're able to start doing that, to use a service like e-releases and pay to get the messaging out there. But there's no reason why you can't sort of foster this yourself organically in the beginning and go from there.
You know what, Mickey, you brought up something that's so valuable to people, and I don't even know if they'll catch it, but I'm going to reiterate it. And that is, build those relationships with those writers. What's so great about technology right now is we have all these social media platforms that we can connect with these writers on a personal level. We can reach out to them on a personal level, or as you suggested, we can get their emails off their websites and just stay in contact with them and build a relationship, whether you've got a press release or not. Hey, great article I read the other day that you wrote. Thank you so much. Knowing strategically that down the road you might have something to say that you want printed in their magazine. They use a service like you to put out the right message and then they can launch it off to people they've built relationships with. And as you also suggested, that, you know, you become that company that's top of mind. You also more than likely become that trusted person because you've built a relationship with them, and they can trust you enough to know that it's accurate information. So huge piece of gold you just threw out there, and I hope people heard you say it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Let's talk specifically as we wrap up, what to expect if they were to reach out to eReleases, what you guys offer specifically, and how you work with a client. And then we'll put out some information about how they can get a hold of you.
Okay, sure. So at eReleases, my job is I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations. I am involved in basically strategy for the company and education. And education is where I shine. I put together blog posts. I put together a free masterclass on building strategic types of press releases. So I would recommend anybody take that. It's at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN, and it's completely free. It's about an hour-long video that just allows you to do an audit of your business for strategic types of press releases. You will probably walk away with enough ideas that you could build a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases over, you can send them out over a year, 2 years, whatever. But you would be doing the types of releases that generally get media pickup, as opposed to if you just do a search in your industry and see what other people are doing press release wise, that you'll just find the ones that don't work. And 95% of the press releases out there aren't generating media pickup. And that's the goal. We're wanting to get original articles. So I would recommend that anybody start there. Once you're ready to do a press release or move it, just either call us, chat with us, email us. We'll take a look at your release, no charge, and maybe give you some pointers as far as what could be done to make it a little bit stronger. But we're there to hold people's hands. We have no salespeople. It's just editors, and they have the right to say, we don't feel this is going to work for you. And so we try not to take people's money, especially entrepreneurs and small businesses, unless we feel like we can help and get your messaging out there. So I think that would be a great place to start. All of our social media is on our website in the lower right. The only one that I really pay attention to and understand is LinkedIn. So that's a direct link to my LinkedIn on there as well.
Mickie, just because I think people, they don't have the confidence in what they're doing oftentimes to push out their own press release. Could you just give us an idea of, I don't need an exact number, but just some of the success that you've seen out there? I know I've done press releases both for companies I work for and personally, and I've seen a tremendous amount of success. And like you said, for a few $100s, the value that I get back in return, you can't even quantify it because there's so much value in press releases. But could you just give some people some confidence boosters on the success rates?
Right. So the success rates are, they're not great with an individual press release. I would say that 95% of the press releases that we move don't generate any articles or earned media. But that being said, the people that go through this masterclass that I have and do strategic types of releases, it's the opposite. Like more than 2/3 of them get media pickup after doing 2 to 4 releases. And it's amazing what one major article can do, and it makes it so worthwhile. But you get discouraged if you do a couple of releases and they don't work. And so I would just challenge anyone to be more strategic. Take the opportunity to put yourself out there. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes around where people don't feel they're important enough to put their messaging out there, that nobody wants to write about a small company. And the truth is, the media does not like to write articles and promote large, well-funded companies. They like to be curators, and they like to pick obscure and small businesses and bring them to the light of their audience. And so it's a great opportunity. And the smaller you are, it can be an advantage in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And again, it's ereleases.com. What was the / for your class?
Plan, PLAN.
Plan. Okay, I'm going to put that in the show notes because I just what a great value for you to throw out there. I've got your website off to the left over here. If you see me looking this way, it's just it's filled with great information. There's some video content on there. And I would highly encourage our listeners to take a look at this, because there's so much value in press releases and using a professional. Anything that I've written myself for press release, I've always turned it over to the professional to polish and push out, because I cannot do that myself. And as long as I've been in business, I like to say that I could. I just can't. There's no substitute for somebody that's in this every day, curating lists and buzzwords and the amount of words that are in these press releases than an expert. So, Mickie, thank you so much for being on our show and for your time today, and just being forthright with your information.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answer is Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.